in Chicago. Oh, whoops. I don't think I hung up properly. Hold on.
Okay.
Too many buttons. John in Chicago, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, guys.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good.
So what do you got
What's
for
up?
us?
Yeah, I just wanted to just get a little understanding, a little better understanding, I guess, on why you choose not to believe in a creator or a supernatural force or whatever you want to call God.
Well, I don't choose not to believe. I don't believe.
Yeah, I think we know you don't believe, but I just was kind of confused on why exactly that is.
Well, why would you?
Yeah.
I mean, if I tell you, you know, that I've got $1 million in a hidden bank account somewhere that is yours if you just send me a token offering, would you believe me?
Well, it depends on if you could show evidence that you have it.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
That's kind of the point, Ben.
Yeah, I just, you know, I happen to believe that there's, you know, tons of evidence out
Such
there.
as?
Yeah.
And I guess the evidence that we have is really up to interpretation. So I just kind of wonder how could you
wouldn't
look
be
at
so
some of
cavalier
the statements in nature and just say that it was right.
That's kind of risky. You wouldn't rely on evidence that's just sort of fuzzy and open to interpretation. You'd want to see, like, you know, detailed statements,
Yeah.
some kind of, you know, very specific kinds of evidence that that are beyond reasonable doubt.
Correct.
So I mean, when it comes to making massive assumptions about the nature of the universe, that's, you know, you kind of want to apply the same level of rigor, which is what science is about when you come right down to it.
Right, I agree. So how could you look at something like DNA and assume that it was a random event?
Well, where does the God come in?
Like, how could you?
How could you look at something like DNA and assume that something had to create it?
Well, how could something that complex and intricate and delicate come about by chance?
Is your God complex?
Well, the God that I would assume that created DNA has to be
So
extremely complex, at
something
least
must have.
intelligence.
So something must have created that God, right?
Possibly. I mean,
So you
nothing
believe
comes
in an
about without a
infinite.
creator as
You
far
actually
as we
believe.
observe.
You actually believe in an infinite chain of creators.
Not necessarily, but
Okay.
define infinite in a finite universe.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, how could you really put a label on what's infinite when we can't observe what's outside of this universe? That, you know, infinity beyond our observation
So-
could be completely different. You see what I mean?
So you don't even know basic things about the God that you're coming up with, like how many there are. I mean, which is a pretty straightforward fact when you come right down to
Yeah.
it. But
Right. I
but
mean,
you're willing
if
to
you
just
view it
make
like
it up
that,
and
I mean,
plug
you
it
could
in
always
order.
say-
Stop interrupting me. You're willing to just basically make it up and plug it in to explain anything that you don't understand, even though this thing that you're coming up with must be much more complicated than the thing that it creates.
No, I think we have a pretty good understanding of physics and how...
Yeah, we do, but we
Yeah.
have no indication that there's a God.
Well, we have indicators. Like
Such
if
as?
if you look at DNA, for example, how could something, a system
I feel
such
like
as
we've
DNA,
been here before.
work without having been created with an intelligence behind it that says, look, this is what it's made to do?
Okay.
How could something like that come about randomly in the
Who said
universe?
it's random? Okay, but besides that, do you know what the argument you're advancing is called?
What's that?
It's called the argument from ignorance. It means I don't know how this could have happened, therefore God.
No, I think we have an idea. If we're attempting to create DNA in a laboratory and we can understand key points of how it functions and we're attempting to do it ourselves, I mean, they still haven't been able to do it in the laboratory, but if they did, wouldn't it
Are you
prove
familiar
that,
with-
okay, an intelligence had to have designed that? It couldn't have just came about through random processes.
Are you familiar with the Craig Venter Institute?
The what?
The Craig Venter Institute.
What is that? No, I'm not familiar.
Okay, you might want to look that up. They've actually created synthetic DNA, and they've inserted it into living organisms.
Right. That's my point. It took an intelligence to do that.
So let me ask you something. Okay,
It did not take a god to do that.
Humans grow plants. Does that mean that all plants are grown by people growing them? I
No,
mean, do
it's
you
just that
accept
humans have
that
an understanding
that
of the
sometimes
creative process it took
do you accept
in
that
which-
sometimes humans replicate things that after they observe them in nature?
Right, but where did nature come from? I'm assuming that if you don't believe that it was created, that it came about.
Right.
Through a
So you
dance-like
think that
process.
all plants have to be grown by farmers all the time?
All plants?
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
that's
did the
where you're
plants come
going with
from
this
that
logic.
were here when we got here.
What?
There were already plants here.
Yeah, and
Well,
there was
Yeah.
already DNA here too.
Right. But where did it come
Sometimes
from, is
stuff
what I'm
just
saying.
happens
I
in the
think
wild
DNA is
without
strong
a creator.
indicator that we were created by something that understands
No,
how
it's not.
DNA works. It works like
No.
a system.
No. Do you know anything about abiogenesis?
I know a little bit.
Okay. I think you need to know a little bit more, because there's actually some pretty cool experiments going on right now about how life could have originated on its own. And the cool thing about those experiments is that you don't have to show that this is exactly how it happened, because we don't know. We probably will never know. What the experiments can demonstrate is that this is how it could have happened.
Right.
Okay? And if we know how it could have happened, then there's no more excuse for invoking a god, because we've demonstrated that's not required.
If we know how it could have happened or how it did happen.
How it
it's
could
different.
have happened.
Well, we could say a lot of things could have happened a lot of different ways.
And-
Like, they still, for example,
Yes, I can say that the purple unicorn created the universe, but I have no evidence of that.
Right.
Mm.
Making stuff
Right,
up
because-
is not a way
yeah.
to answer questions that you don't know the answer to. Because, if you're just allowed to invent like magic genies and whatnot, that can explain anything, but you have to actually have specific evidence for the thing that you're trying to come up with. It's not enough to just say, well, I can imagine something that could explain it, and then that lets you off the hook for actually finding that
well,
thing.
it's not that. I think, with all due respect, it's just comparing the two interpretations of it. I think.
Well, do you have any positive evidence for a god besides just saying I can't think of what else could have done it?
Well, look at all the different so-called holy books.
Yeah,
around
they're
the
all
world.
very,
Yeah.
very
different
different.
texts that from ancient people who clearly knew more than we do about the
What?
world and
What?
the universe. who wrote
Ancient
these
people knew
books.
more than we
And-
do. There's like a Native American legend that said that God created people by baking cookies, and that some of them came out too dark and he threw them into Africa, and some of them came out too white and they came out and he threw them into Europe. I swear, you can look this up. And then the last batch was perfect, and that was the Native Americans.
What Native
These
Americans
people
that
didn't
must
know
be
more than
spoken
we
to
do about the
Sutra
origin of
or
the
something.
universe.
But, look at the ancient civilizations around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at them.
Where's their internet?
Yeah, exactly.
My interpretation of it is that there was a golden age at some point, and these ancients knew more than we do.
I
If
think
there-
you know
if
about as much
there-
about history as about science.
If there's ever been a golden age, we're probably living in it.
Well, how can you say that when the ancients built stuff that we can't build right now?
We can too.
What did they build that we can't build?
Have you been to Las Vegas lately? They got pyramids there.
Yeah.
The Las Vegas pyramids are nothing compared to the actual pyramid. Have you been there?
Have you been to like the Taj Mahal?
No, but I've been to Egypt, and
Alright.
that pyramid was not built by ropes and
Yeah,
and
actually
stone.
it was.
Yeah, it was.
There are ways to find out stuff like that.
Yeah, and we've asked people that have been to those sites, engineers with know-how, not just archaeologists, and they say that we couldn't have built that with stone stone.
No, I'm sorry. You're very, very misinformed about what people know about history.
Engineers with know-how, where would we
I
find
don't
one
think
like
so.
that?
I mean, the water erosion on the Sphinx alone dates it at 9,000 BC. How can you say that people in 9,000 BC were building those monuments? If, according to evolution timeline, we were barely in
9,000
civilization.
BC.
We were farmers.
I think that's,
Dude, do you know how old the human race is supposed to be?
How old?
Do you know? Because you're saying that that we were barely anything 9,000 years ago. How old do you think the human race is?
I personally don't think it's anything crazy, like, hundreds of thousands of years old.
Oh, so
That's
2
just my
million
personal
years would be
opinion
really
on
crazy,
how I see
right?
the evidence.
You don't know anything about evolution, so you can't be making
Well, how can you
blanket
say what I know
statements
and don't
about
know
what
about
you think
evolution?
you
We can-
because you are clueless here.
yeah, you're demonstrating every time you open your mouth that
when
you're
does your
ignorant of
evolution
these things.
timeline say that man began building megalithic structures?
When they were building stuff has nothing to do with evolution.
What?
I mean, that is
That's
anthropology.
your interpretation of it.
By
That's
the
what I'm-
time,
No, it's not anybody's interpretation of it. That's what the science says.
Well, what does science say about it?
About what?
About,
What's your specific question?
well, my specific question regarding ancient civilizations is
pyramids
how do
were
you
built
explain
around like
it?
1500 BC, right? Give or take.
I think they were there before then.
I
But
don't remember. I can look it up though. That's something you can do when you don't know things.
yeah, you can look it
Well,
up. But
I'm talking about the ones that we do know about.
Yeah.
The Mayans, the ones who had
2600
far
BC.
advanced astrology and a calendar that we didn't figure out how to do till, not that long ago.
Do you
I
think
mean,
the world's ending this
people-
year?
The people who
Yeah.
built the pyramid knew how to build a pyramid. How could you
Yes,
say
and
they
so
were
do we.
farmers?
People are smart. They know things. They figure stuff out. In fact, I mean, in a weird way, it's kind of racist to say that that people in these ancient cultures were too dumb to build these things themselves.
yeah, especially since, okay, we both have kids, and when my kid was about 2 years old, he could build a pyramid. I bet yours could too, huh?
Out of blocks?
With blocks or Legos or whatever.
I don't think you guys are aware of what actually had to go on into building these. that
We
pyramid.
are. I
Yeah,
don't
we
think
are,
you're
actually.
aware of what went on because you're attributing it to magic and you don't need to.
No, it's not magic. It's engineering. It's science.
Yes.
That's right. And they had that stuff back then.
Right, and modern
Not-
architects and engineers are saying that there's no way that this
No,
wasn't-
they're not.
No, hey, John, do you realize that you're actually talking to two engineers?
Well, I'm a computer engineer, so
Well,
that's
still,
not
but-
real engineering.
You're a computer engineer?
Yeah, but she's an actual, like, physical engineer.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
an aerospace engineer, so.
Take the statue, one of the statues from ancient Egypt. There's no way they could have done those statues in such a precise manner without machine tools.
You
And
know,
yet they did.
no matter how many times you repeat that they can't do that, the answer is not going to become you're right.
Well, it's
Well,
been
what do you-
explained.
let me
How
ask you
could they
something.
do it with stone tools with precision,
Let me ask you something.
outmatching our present day machine tools.
Let me ask you something. If you say that they could not have done that without machine tools,
Right.
what happened to the machine tools?
Perhaps they were destroyed.
By
And if-
what?
Wait a minute.
How could you destroy a machine tool with stone tools?
No, I mean like a global catastrophe, perhaps.
Did Michelangelo have machine tools? I'm curious now.
Michelangelo?
Yeah. I
I'm
mean,
not
as far
sure
as I
about that.
heard, he used a chisel. I mean, very low-tech
Yeah.
approach, and that was like 2,000 years
Michelangelo's
later.
sculptures are nothing compared to the ones in Egypt. Let's be
Okay.
honest.
What?
So the machine tools that they used to carve the structures in Egypt were destroyed in a global catastrophe. The same global catastrophe that did not destroy the pyramids that they built with the machine tools.
This is a
Of
very
course, I mean,
selective
the pyramids
catastrophe.
Yeah.
were built to withstand that. That's why we still have
Oh,
ancient
okay.
structures around the world that we gaze at and don't know how they were built.
Okay.
Huge stones. I mean, look at Pumapunku or Machu Picchu. How did they do that?
By building
without
it.
machine
Yeah.
tools?
I think we've gotten all the
They're
entertainment
hauled
we can
rocks,
squeeze
yeah.
out of this call.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you very
think
much
so.
for calling. Bye. Who's going to top that one?
Well, I don't know.